My parents lived rent-free since I paid for everything. Then they took my sister in, packed up my belongings, and excluded me from dinner. At 29 years old, I never pictured myself in this situation. My name is Alex, and I have been living in the city with my parents for the past year. The twist is that I'm not some depressed millennial who returned home unable to pay rent. No. I purchased the house. I pay the entire mortgage, including groceries and bills. My parents receive no payment. Let me give you some background. My parents, Kevin, 57, and Jessica, 54, are retired teachers. After years of living in the countryside, they decided to relocate when they retired. They claimed to be tired of the quiet life and wished to be closer to the thrills of the city. At least that's what they said. I considered, why not? As a software engineer, I was doing well, earning a respectable living, and the city had better job opportunities. Nonetheless, because they had done so much for me growing up, I hoped to help them. Regular family situations. We relocated to a wonderful 3-bedroom house in the city. Though it's hardly a mansion, the 3 bedrooms, a small backyard, and a living room large enough for everyone to sit comfortably, are significant improvements. As the one who pays the bills, I made sure to claim the master bedroom. Its own bathroom and walk-in closet are a lifesaver, as everyone else must share a bathroom. Since I work from home approximately 80% of the time, I converted the second bedroom into my home office. I set everything up precisely the way I wanted it. 2 monitors, a comfortable chair, the whole thing. When the family arrived, the third bedroom was transformed into a guest room. Simple enough. Initially, everything appeared to be in good condition. We all settled into a very good schedule. My parents were absolutely overjoyed to be in the city. I did my job, paid the bills, and cleaned the house while they went about their business, gardening, watching TV, and whatever else retirees do. Paying for everything was no trouble. I make 6 figures, and aside from their pensions, I think their income to be extremely low. Besides, family matters. You don't charge family rent, right? The tipping point occurred, and let me tell you, everything happened faster than I could have imagined. My mother casually mentioned something at breakfast one day, as if it was no big deal. Initially, I didn't give it much thought. She went on. Your sister Diana and her husband Tom are thinking about moving to the city. Diana is pregnant, so they could really use the help. They're not doing so well back in their old town. Tom, 32, and Diana, 31, had always been the type of couple that shifted from one miserable situation to the next. They were not necessarily struggling, but they were also not flourishing. Diana's pregnancy brought another layer of intricacy to the situation. Though my mother had different intentions, I assumed they would move to the city and live in a small flat. Now, this is the part I should have anticipated, but I didn't. She sat me down a few days later and said, "We've invited Diana and Tom to come stay with us. It'll only be for a short time until they get back on their feet." Her tone was very innocent. I sort of nodded along, thinking, yeah, whatever. They plan to stay for a while before moving into their own home. My parents didn't specifically ask if I was okay with them moving in. They merely told me after they had already greeted them. However, I was unaware that this was merely the beginning of the anarchy. Here's the deal. They walk in, and it's clear they intend to stay permanently. I was still processing everything when Diana and Tom arrived at our place a week later, suitcase in hand. Since I am the one who pays for everything, food, energy, mortgage, you name it, and now I have 2 more people to feed and care for, I can already feel the anxiety building. No one even asked if I approved of it. Don't get me wrong, I love my sister. They simply moved in as if it were the most regular thing in the world. Her family comes first after all. Diana isn't exactly the most conscientious person on the globe though. She is the type of person that is always in difficult situations and relies on others to help her. Additionally, Tom is decent enough, but his entitled attitude disturbs me in the wrong way. Like Diana's husband, he instinctively expects special attention from everyone around him. But this is where things begin to go horribly wrong. Diana begins making these small remarks a few days after they move in. You know, the kind of thing that appears innocuous but is actually somewhat bothersome. "This place is so big, it must be hard for you to clean it all by yourself," she would say. Or, "I can't wait until the baby's here. We're going to need a lot of space for all the baby stuff." I hadn't given it much thought at first. But then came the shocker. Diana and Tom approached me one evening after I had finished a long day of work and said they wanted to talk. Okay. Maybe they'll admit they took up space and ate all the food without offering to help? No, however. Rather, Diana, all relaxed, adds, "So we've been thinking. It would make more sense for us to take the master bedroom." I simply gazed at her. What I was hearing astonished me. "We need more space," Tom stated unequivocally. "Now keep in mind that I pay for the entire mortgage. The baby's going to need a lot of stuff, and your room has a walk-in closet and a private bathroom. My name is on the house. I pay for all of the meals as well, so I've been assisting the entire family without demanding anything in return." And here they were, imploring me to leave my own bedroom. I was stunned. I was unable to react immediately. Diana was not having it. When I eventually offered, "Why don't you just take the spare room? It's plenty big and it's already set up for guests," I felt a rush of hubris wash over me. "But that room doesn't have a walk-in closet, and the baby's going to need space," she told me. I glanced at them for a few seconds, trying to remain calm. I responded, keeping my voice as firm as possible. "I'm not giving up my room." Tom was astonished that I wasn't simply caving in. "But Diana, you could have the extra room, or find another somewhere to stay." She looked offended, and I realized this wasn't going to end well. After that uncomfortable conversation in which Diana and Tom directly requested me to give up my room, I hoped that they would realize how silly they sounded, and back off. Who in their right mind expects the person responsible for the food, house payment, and light maintenance to simply abandon their space like that? Of course, this is not exactly what happened. Over the next few days, I started to notice these small details. Diana and Tom were, first and foremost, astonishingly relaxed. Too relaxed. I hadn't spoken anything yet, but it was building inside me. They'd have their belongings strewn over the living room, their shoes kicked off next to the couch, and Diana's already discussing where she'd place all the baby gear, as if the house was theirs or something. That sense of something poised to fall. One day, I had to spend several hours at work. Though I occasionally have meetings that I cannot miss, I usually work from home. Still, when I get home about lunchtime to get something to eat, I find something weird as soon as I walk in. My own belongings, my stuff, are in the hallway. Knowing what this signifies, my heart was already racing, but I needed to see it for myself. My clothing are piled on the floor, and my computer display is simply sitting there, disconnected, as if someone was transferring it. Diana was standing in the midst of my room, packing up the last of my possessions. As I stepped up, she didn't look surprised as I entered. I could not believe her. Simply looking over at me. "Oh hey, I was just finishing up." I cried out, perhaps louder than I intended. "What the hell are you doing?" She had the fortitude to act calm and collected, as if this were no big deal. As if that were the most normal thing in the world. "Your mom said we could start moving our stuff in here. The baby's coming soon, and we need the space," she told me. I could feel my blood temperature rising. Mother is not making a single payment on the mortgage. My mother felt it was okay to let Diana and Tom use my room without first consulting me. I was not going to let this slide pass. "No," I replied, entering the room. "You're not moving into my room. I already told you guys to take the guest room." Diana objected. She crossed her arms and gave me this look, as if I were the one acting crazily. I was not having it. "The guest room is too small for the baby, and there is no closet. We need extra space. I'm the one paying the mortgage. I'm the one who has been paying for everything in this house. You and Tom aren't even contributing anything. If you need more space, you're welcome to find your own place." At this point, I was outraged, and I could tell Diana was becoming irritated as well. She didn't, however, back down. She said, "Your mom said it was fine." As if it were the final word. Now, I've lost it. Marching back out of the room, I grabbed my phone and called my mother, who, by the way, was not even home at the time. I didn't even let her say hello. The second she responded, there was a long pause on the other end, as if she didn't know what to say. "Mom, did you tell Diana and Tom they could move into my room?" I could not believe what she said at the end. "Well, I thought it would be the best solution. They need the space, and you already have the office. It's not like you're using the room for much." I snapped, "Are you serious right now?" My mother tried to calm me down, telling me it wasn't a big deal and that we were all family. But I was finished listening. I pay the mortgage, I pay for all the groceries, I pay the bills. And you think it's okay for Diana and Tom to just take over my room? Diana must have heard me because she stormed out the door looking upset. I'm not giving them my room. If they don't move their stuff, they're going to need to find another place to stay. Tom walked in at that exact moment. You're seriously going to throw us out with a baby on the way? He approached, looking furious, implying he had heard the disturbance from outside. What's going on? He inquired. So I prepared it for him. What's going on is your wife thinks she can just take over my room without even asking. And I'm telling you both right now, it's not happening. You can either stay in the guest room, or you can leave. Tom wasn't thrilled about it, saying how important family is and how I should be willing to sacrifice things for them. He grew defensive, but at that point, I was beyond reason. Sacrifices? I'm already paying for this entire house. What are you guys contributing, huh? Nothing. And now you think you could just walk in and take over? The ranting became quite loud at this point, and I believe it was evident that neither side would back down. I ignored my mother's attempts to beckon me back, too furious to deal with her apologies. Tom went on and on about how I wasn't being fair, how they had a baby on the way, and how families should stick together in difficult situations. Diana went out, slamming the door behind her, and Tom simply remained there, staring at me as if I were the evil guy. I'd had enough. I turned to both of them and said, "You have until the end of the day to move your belongings out of my room. If you don't, I'll do it for you." Nonetheless, I wasn't disturbed. I spent the remainder of the day in my office, attempting to cool off. I wasn't going to let them walk all over me in my own home, especially when I was the one paying for everything. I knew if I went back out there it would just become another conflict I didn't want to deal with. Any of them. Deep down, I knew this was the starting point. They wouldn't be laying down, and I suspected my mother would get involved once more. I wasn't about to give up either. Not this time. Following the altercation with Diana and Tom, I reasoned that perhaps, just maybe, they would finally back off. I mean, I was really clear. My room was not for sale, and they either stayed in the guest room or found another place to live. For me, everything seemed really basic. Naturally, things didn't go exactly as planned. I kept to myself the next day. I was not looking for additional drama. To be honest, I was still fuming about how things had gone. Working in the office most of the time, I tried to act normal, but I could feel the tension in the air. By the time supper arrived, I didn't mind the silence. Everyone seemed to be dodging one another and avoiding the elephant in the room. I could live with Diana and Tom staying in the guest room as long as they didn't cause any more difficulties. But then something happened that pushed me over the limit. That evening, I went into the kitchen to fetch some food. As usual, I had purchased all of the items, but when I opened the refrigerator, it was nearly empty. I'm talking about food I bought 2 days ago. It's gone. The same thing happened when I examined the freezer. Obviously, I knew my parents did not eat that way, and neither did I. Who else could it be? Diana and Tom. I was already upset, but I attempted to ignore it. Anyway, I'll just get more tomorrow. They would have probably helped themselves to everything without asking. Still, it was more than just food. My mother entered the kitchen without looking me in the eye. When I went to sit down to eat, Mother secretly prepared plates for Tom, Diana, my father, and herself. Then she did not make one for me. First, I imagined she'd forgotten. So I essentially waited. She sat down after finishing feeding everyone. Not lying, I felt my rage building once more. As I stood there watching them all start eating, it appeared like they were punishing me for arguing for myself. Trying to calm down, I turned to face my mother. "You didn't make me a plate." She hardly turned to look. She continued as casually as if remarking on the temperature. "You don't want to help the family, and you don't eat with the family." I couldn't believe what I heard. She didn't even answer. "Excuse me. I pay for everything here. The groceries, the mortgage, and now I'm being iced out?" I grew even more irritated when my father simply sighed and continued to eat as if nothing had happened. Diana and Tom sat there with a hey attitude, as if they'd won a power play. Diana even smiled at me as I passed her. I couldn't handle it anymore. I was not about to be treated as a foreigner in the house I had paid for. My mind racing, I slammed the refrigerator door shut and raced out of the kitchen. Knowing what I needed to do next, I went straight to my room, grabbed up my laptop and started looking for eviction notices. I reasoned that if they wanted to disrespect me, they could find another location to live. After all, it is enough. I am not a free hotel service. Within an hour, I had the paperwork completed. I made 2 copies, one for my parents, and one for Diana and Tom. However, at this moment, they had crossed the border. It seemed uncomfortable to separate from my own family. For weeks, they had been disrespecting me, acting as if the house belonged to them, and then freezing me out because I refused to comply with their ridiculous demands. After the alerts were printed, I went out to the living room, where everyone was sitting and acting as if nothing was wrong. I was not going to put up with it anymore. I said nothing. Tom's face turned white. "If you're not out by tomorrow, I'm calling the police." He had not expected this. "You can't be serious." I said, "I am serious." Tom stood up and looked at me, but I did not move. "I'm done with this. You've been freeloading here without contributing a thing. Now you think you can take over my house? Not anymore. We're family." And I was larger and bigger than him, so I wasn't going to be terrified of his little anger tantrum. "We're family," he whispered with tight teeth. "You can't just throw us out." "Yes," I said, moving closer. "I'm the one who pays for this house. Not you, not Diana, and not Mom and Dad. If you don't want to be respectful, you don't get to stay here." Diana naturally began crying, as if this would change anything. "I'm pregnant, and you're kicking us out? What kind of brother are you?" I responded, "I'm the brother who has been paying for everything while you two take advantage of me." Tom appeared to want to fight more, but I could see the knowledge creeping in. "You have 24 hours. That's more than generous." My mother, who had been sitting there silently all day, suddenly spoke up. I wasn't lying, but I didn't care anymore. "You can't do this, honey. They're your sister and brother-in-law. This is family." I pointed to the eviction notice she was holding and said, "I've already done it. You have 30 days to find somewhere else. If you haven't left by then, I'll take legal action." The room fell silent after that. My father sat there staring at the table without saying anything, as if he didn't know what else to do. Even though my mother appeared to be in tears, I refused to back down. It wasn't about politeness anymore. After a few long minutes, I returned to my room and left them to process everything. This was about standing up for myself and refusing to let them walk all over me. I locked the door, sat down at my desk, and inhaled deeply. I'd kicked out my own family, something I never imagined I'd have to do, but it made sense. It felt proper. The house was dead quiet for the rest of the evening. I wasn't going to be taken advantage of again. Nobody attempted to challenge me. No one came to my door. They were all aware, I suppose, that I was no longer messing around. That night I got the best sleep I'd had in weeks. If they didn't respect me, they didn't deserve to come here. The next morning, after all of the chaos, I awoke and lay there for a few minutes, staring at the ceiling. Today, I realized, was the day. Diana and Tom had 24 hours. The deadline was suddenly slipping away. Strangely enough, I wasn't even enraged anymore. I had previously approved of what needed to happen. Now, it was all about execution. As soon as I got up and came into the kitchen, I knew something had changed. Not precisely tense, but more tranquil, as if something major is about to happen. Because no one was in the kitchen, I assumed I would prepare my own breakfast. Diana and Tom's last grocery run left the refrigerator rather bare, but I made do with what was left. As I sat there eating, I reflected on how rapidly this situation had escalated. Things were actually pretty good not long ago. My mom and I were getting along. I was working, paying my mortgage and buying food, and things was going along smoothly. When Diana and Tom approached, everything shifted. A few hours later, I heard someone walk down the corridor. It's remarkable how quickly things can change if individuals believe they are entitled to commodities they did not earn. That was Dad, quietly strolling in. He picked up a cup of coffee and sat across from me at the table. At first he said nothing but sipped and glanced out the window. At last he announced, "Diana and Tom are leaving today." I did not respond right away. They had decided to depart on their own, so I wasn't sure if he was reminding me of the deadline or notifying me. In either case, I nodded and began eating. he said. They don't have anywhere to go. With a low voice. I paused mid-bite and looked at him. They're going to stay at a motel for a while until they figure things out. Though the majority of me understood what had to happen, a part of me felt terrible. I gave them time. I had been too kind for too long, and if I didn't set boundaries now, they would continue to take advantage. I kept my voice calm. He did not argue. He didn't try to guilt-trip me, which was surprising. He didn't want it to come to this, but I had little choice. He nodded quietly and proceeded to sip his coffee. He undoubtedly recognized that I was not going to back down this time. There was no turning back after what had happened. Diana and Tom began packing around lunchtime. I remained in my room for the majority of it, unwilling to create another quarrel, or hear any more passive-aggressive remarks. Not long later, Tom knocked on my door. After a time, I could hear his voice become louder down the corridor. It was evident that something was about to happen. "You're really going to let this happen?" he asked, his voice harsh. As I opened it, he stood there with the same angry expression he'd had since I sent him the eviction notice. "You're just going to kick us out like this?" I crossed my arms and leaned against the door frame. "I gave you 24 hours. I told you what needed to happen." He shook his head, teeth clenched. "We're family, man. You don't do this to your family." I inhaled deeply, hoping to cool off. Families don't take advantage of each other. I'm not just kicking you out for no reason. You've been freeloading here for weeks without contributing anything. I've been paying the mortgage, the groceries, everything. And instead of being grateful, you tried to take my room and push me out of my own house. I'm not going to let that happen." Tom did not say anything for a few seconds. I could tell he was furious, even though he had nothing left to dispute about. Though he didn't want to admit it, he realized I was correct. "So that's it, huh?" he replied finally. "You're just throwing us out?" I responded with the same option I mentioned yesterday. Tom glanced at me before turning and leaving without saying anything else. "You can find a way to live somewhere else. Or you can stay in the guest room and actually respect me and my space. If you can't do that, then yeah, you're leaving." I let out a deep breath and shut the door. Although I knew it had to be done, it was exhausting. Diana and Tom left around mid-afternoon. Though I didn't want to see them leave, I wasn't expecting a tearful parting or anything. The house felt different after they left. They packed up their car and went away without saying anything to me. Quieter. Less pressure. That day my parents provided me with little guidance. They were still processing everything that had happened. My mother appeared unhappy to me, despite the fact that she never mentioned it. Perhaps she finally realized that I wasn't the one who started all of this. That evening my mother knocked on my door. Diana and Tom had pushed me too far. She entered, sat on the edge of my bed, and stared at the floor for some time. She said softly, "They're gone." And I nodded without saying anything. "I never imagined it would get to this point," she concluded. Looking at her, I realized how much strain we were placing on you. I felt some of the irritation subside slightly. "It's not that I didn't want to help," I told you. "But you guys treated me like I didn't matter. Like my needs and my space weren't important." She moaned and nodded. We sat in silence for a few minutes. "You're right. We should have seen it sooner." I broke the silence by saying, "I don't want you and Dad to leave." She seemed upset, but she was starting to see where I was coming from. "But if things don't change, I can't live like this." She nodded once more and stood slowly. "We'll sort it out," she said. "Things will be different. I promise." As she left the room, I felt a strange combination of relief and exhaustion. Although Diana and Tom's situation had been addressed, my parents still had work to do. Though I knew it wouldn't be easy, it seemed like they were eager to listen. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could finally breathe. The home was silent, and the anxiety that had been lingering around had subsided. At least I had my space back. It wasn't a perfect remedy. Most importantly, I had respect. Looking back, I realized that sometimes you have to make difficult decisions to protect yourself, even if it means defying family expectations. It's about setting boundaries and demanding the respect you so well deserve, not about selfishness. As I sat in my room, finally alone and at peace, I couldn't help but be proud. I'm not sure what the future holds for my relationship with Diana and Tom, or with my parents. But I know one thing. I will not let anyone, family or not, take advantage of me again. I had stood up for myself, told the truth, and regained control of my life. It wasn't pretty, nor was it easy, but it was extremely important. And as I drifted off to sleep that evening, I knew that whatever challenges awaited me the next day, I was prepared to face them full on, with new strength and self-esteem that no one else could take away. Thanks for watching and diving into this wild family drama with me. If you love Reddit family drama, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss the next one.